Good morning, fourth graders. Welcome to the Washington Pavilion and to the Mary Summervold Hall. We are so excited about the next opportunity that you have. My name is Ann Smith, and I'm the coordinator for all the libraries for the Sioux Falls School District, which means that I work very closely with your librarians to make sure that our libraries are full of wonderful stories. Last spring, you all received a copy of the book, The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane, and the book had a very special cover that had a special insignia on it that said that this was the 2014 Young Readers One Book South Dakota from the Center for the Book. Those people, which are a whole bunch of people all across South Dakota, paid for you all to have a copy of the book for your very own to keep forever so that you could reread and remember all the stories about Edward Tulane whenever you want to. So thank you very much to the Center for the Book and for the South Dakota Humanities Council, which is the big group that the Center for the Book is part of. There are a couple other sponsors. We always have to thank the people that do nice things for us, and there are many, many, many people who came together to make it possible for you to come down here this morning. The AWC Family Foundation, the National Endowment for the Humanities, which means that there's the South Dakota Humanities Council, which is for our state. The National Endowment is for every state, all 50 states in the United States. We'd also like to thank the Brass Family Foundation, the South Dakota Arts Council, South Dakota Public Broadcasting, the South Dakota Community Foundation, Avera, the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation, First Bank and Trust, the Children's Museum of South Dakota, and the Washington Pavilion, of course. And the dozens and dozens of volunteers who plan, promote, and staff all of the Festival of Books events. And I would like to say a special thank you to all of the teachers out there who so carefully made sure that you all got into the correct seats this morning. I marveled to watch how nicely you walked in and sat down. Thank you very, very much. Please consider coming back tonight. Miss DiCamillo is going to be back here again tonight speaking, and when she finishes, they're going to open these curtains, and there's going to be many more authors who will be here to sign books and talk to you. It's free, so just let your parents know that you can come down tonight, and they can hear Kate DiCamillo as well. Kate DiCamillo has written many books, including Flora and Ulysses, which was awarded the Newbery Medal this year. Many of you have probably read The Tale of Despero. Yes? Or Because of Winn-Dixie. Or maybe you know Bink and Golly. Or even Mercy Watson Goes for a Ride. Well, you're here to hear Kate. She's a native of Florida, but she now lives in Minneapolis, and she describes herself this way. I am short and loud. I hate to cook, and I love to eat. I am single and childless, but I have lots of friends, and I am an aunt to 3 lovely children and 1 not-so-lovely dog. I think of myself as an enormously lucky person. I get to tell stories for a living. Please welcome Kate DiCamillo.
How are you guys? I'm going to turn on the microphone. That will help. Yes, now you can hear me. I'm so glad to see all of you this morning. And did you see how gorgeous this theater was when you came in? It's like astonishingly beautiful. It's actually kind of scary to be up here on a stage in front of this many people. I think I'm not going to do this. Yes, I will. Okay, I will. So what I'm going to talk to you guys about is how I became a writer. And when I finish that part of it, I'm hoping that some of you have questions about particular books about writing in general, about the meaning of life. Anybody think they have a question like that? Raise your hand. Those are some uncertain hands. I bet you, as you sit there and listen, you'll come up with questions. So when this is over with, then we'll do some question and answer where you guys will ask questions and I'll come out too because I can walk around with this mic on, okay? Does anybody have any complaints yet? No? Good. Okay. So let's start at the beginning. So that's me. I was born in March of 1964 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I've got a brother who is 3 years older than me. He's got this baby book, and everything is in that baby book. The first time he sneezed, the first time he rolled over, the first time he looked at somebody cross-eyed, it's all written down and dated and everything. My baby book has this picture in it, and that's it. And so things were just a lot more chaotic by the time I came along. So I don't know what kind of baby I was. I looked like I was a happy baby. I don't know. I could be making that up. So here I am when I'm 3 years old, dressed up as Bugs Bunny. I loved that mask. When I pulled that mask down, I felt like I was hidden, and that to me meant that I could stare at people all I wanted to, and I loved staring at people. There's a writer, Flannery O'Connor. She's got this great quote, "The writer must never be ashamed of staring. There is nothing that does not require his attention." This is Flannery O'Connor. When she was a kid, she taught a chicken to walk backwards. Right, like a news station came and did a piece on it and everything. Okay, so, but back to me. Right after this picture was taken, this was in October, and the next month I got really, really sick. I got pneumonia. And I was so sick that I ended up in the hospital in an oxygen tent. So I had a really high fever. It was hard for me to breathe. This picture was taken in the hospital. You can see the hospital band on there. I was one of their best customers, so I was like in their hospital yearbook. I hated being in the hospital. I felt lousy. I was alone a lot, and I was really, really afraid a lot of the time. There were these nurses in the hospital who wore white dresses, white stockings, white shoes, and then they had on their heads these big white hats that looked kind of like ships. And the only thing these nurses ever said to me was, "You are a very, very sick little girl." And when somebody with a ship on their head tells you that you're very, very sick, you tend to believe them. So I was in that hospital that first year. The next winter, I got pneumonia again. And I was back in the hospital that winter for a long time. The winter after that, I got pneumonia again, back in the oxygen tent, back in the hospital. So I started to get this feeling. Like, see that train? See the person trying to catch it? That's the way it felt to me. I felt like life was that train, and I was getting left behind. Everything was happening without me. I didn't get to go to school. I had a wonderful nursery school that I went to. I couldn't go because I was in the hospital all the time and I was sick. One great thing happened to me in the hospital. My dad came to visit, and he brought me this gift of a little farm in a red net bag. So everything was made out of wood. There was a little wooden sun, there was a wooden moon, there was a wooden farmer, a wooden farmer's wife, wooden chickens, wooden cows, and wooden pigs. And he laid out all the pieces of this world on the sheets of my hospital bed, and he moved things around, and he told me a story. And when he was done telling me the story, he asked if I could take those pieces and tell him a story. And I did. And it was the first time I understood what storytelling could do. It made me feel less alone, it made me feel less afraid, and it made me feel more connected to the world. So after that third winter in the hospital, the doctors said, "You're going to have to move her to a warm weather climate so that she doesn't keep on getting pneumonia. You can either go to Arizona or you can go where? Where was the other place you would go? Florida, the Sunshine State." So that's where we moved. We moved right into the center of the state, not very far away from Orlando. How many of y'all have been to Disney World? This has nothing to do with anything, but I worked at Disney World for a long time. How many of you went into Spaceship Earth? Yeah, that's where I worked, Spaceship Earth. I wore a blue polyester spacesuit, and I told people to watch their step. But anyway, that was much later. So we moved there, and this is before Disney. So where I lived was a citrus farming community, and you could go up into this tower, to the very, very top of that tower, to the crow's nest, and you could see the Atlantic Ocean on one side and the Gulf of Mexico on the other, and then all these orange groves just lined up as far as the eye could see. The world looked very neat. It had a pattern to it. Everything made sense when you were up at the top of that tower. It was only 50 cents to go up, so we went up there a lot when we first moved to Claremont. And I loved looking out over the world and seeing that things kind of had an order and a sense to them. When I was down on the ground, things didn't make quite as much sense. So this is my mother, my brother, and me. And you can see my father's not in that photograph. He was an orthodontist, and he had a practice in Pennsylvania, and he was going to sell it and move down to Florida. But he never did that. He never moved to live with us. I saw him again. He would visit us, and sometimes when we were expecting him, he didn't show up, and sometimes when we weren't expecting him, he showed up. But I never lived with him again. And this left kind of like this hole at the center of things for me, this question about people coming and going that has kind of preoccupied me for the rest of my life. So, however, here's the good news. The move to Florida worked great in this respect. I never got pneumonia again, but I kept right on getting sick. I got pink eye. I got impetigo. Anybody know what impetigo is? It's kind of like a skin thing that makes your skin purple, but let's not talk too much about that. I got pink eye again. I got measles. Anybody had measles? See, this is all like, that shows how old I am. Measles has been eradicated. Chicken pox. Anybody had chicken pox? There you go. I got a worse case of impetigo all over my body. I got pink eye. That's me in first grade with what? Pink eye. My mother stopped getting the school photos after a while because it was just a picture of me with pink eye. So I got measles a second time. People will tell you that you can't do that. I did that. I was very impressed with myself. I got pink eye again. I got measles a third time. Truly, the doctors should study me. Dr. Smith was very impressed with me. I got mumps. I got scarlet fever. I got pink eye in both eyes. So it wouldn't surprise you to learn that I missed a ton of school. My mother was a teacher. She was a great teacher. She loved to teach. But she didn't stay home with me because she had to go off to teach. There were neighborhood ladies who would bring me lunch. But for the most part, I spent a lot of the day home alone. And for a good portion of that time, we did not have a TV. So what do you think I did? I read. And it was a huge gift to me. Here are some of the books that my mother bought me that I loved. Island of the Blue Dolphins. Anybody read that one? It's spectacular. This is a biography of Abraham Lincoln, who I just adored Abraham Lincoln, and I wanted to read everything about him that I could. Borrowers, do you guys know what the borrowers are? Little tiny people that live in the baseboards of a building. They're like, I think there are 4 books in that series, and they're wonderful, and they're still in print. You can find them at your library. Bear Called Paddington, about a bear who comes from darkest Peru and finds a home in London. And I don't know if these are in print anymore. All of a Kind Family. Again, I think there are 3, and it's turn of the century New York, and it's this wonderful family. And I loved all of these books. Reading the books kept me occupied, but it also changed me because it made me believe in impossible things, that you could be really small as a borrower, and you could still be brave, that you could be like Abraham Lincoln and grow up in a cabin with dirt floors, and you would have fleas, and you could still go on to become president of the United States, that you could be a bear from darkest Peru and come over on a boat and find love and a family in London. So the books worked to make me believe that all kinds of things were possible. By the time I got to high school, this is my high school photo, and as you can see, I look really, really pleased with myself. I wasn't getting sick as much, and by the time I got to my senior year, I had perfect attendance, And pretty soon after this photo was taken, I went trotting off to college, and what do you think that I majored in? As somebody who loves to read, I majored in English. And I never really thought about what I was going to do with the degree until I was in my senior year of college, and I had a conversation with a professor that went something like this. So that person on the left is the professor, and then the little person on the right is me. And this is what the professor said to me. You have a certain facility with words. You should consider graduate school. That's what he said. What do you think I heard? You sure are talented. You're going to be a famous writer. So I thought he was trying to tell me something about how talented I was. That's not what he was saying at all. But I thought, why bother with graduate school if I'm so talented? I'm just going to go off and be a writer. And so with that really not very smart decision firmly in place, I graduated from college and entered into a time of my life that I refer to as the Dark Ages. That's what it looked like. And so during the Dark Ages, what did I do? I told everybody that I was a writer. I read books on writing. I talked to people about writing. I dreamed of getting published. I wore black turtlenecks because that's what writers are supposed to wear. And there was one thing during that 10-year time that I did not do that I should have been doing. Does anybody know what that is? Right. Yeah, you're smarter than I am. That's it. That's what I wasn't doing. And then right before I turned 30, I had an epiphany. This is what an epiphany looks like. It's kind of like a light bulb goes off in your head. You have this sudden, profound understanding. This is what I understood. What if it's actually easier for me to do the work than it is not to do the work? What if it's easier for me to sit down and write than it is to talk about writing and dream about writing? So I thought, okay, I'm going to try. And I'm going to try by I'm going to make a deal with myself. I'm going to write 2 pages a day. That's all. That's not a lot. And I thought, I'm just going to do that every day and see what happens. So every morning I would get up and I would write 2 pages. Pretty soon after I made that decision, I moved from Florida up here to this part of the world, to Minnesota. And in Minnesota, I got a job in a book warehouse. In that book warehouse, everybody did something else. They were either writers or dancers or actors or musicians. And there was this one guy there named Gary who also wanted to write and who knew that I was writing, and he knew that I was writing 2 pages a day. And I would come in and clock in the morning, and Gary would be waiting by the time clock to ask me these 2 questions. Here's the first question. Do you think that Dickens wrote just 2 pages a day? So here Gary is mocking me because Dickens, who wrote enormous novels, there's no way that he could have written 2 pages a day. Gary was telling me that I wasn't a real writer. I had no answer for this question. It just made me mad. And while I was getting mad about this question, he would ask me the second question. What's plan B, babe? What's plan B for when the writing doesn't work out? These questions made me so mad that when my alarm clock went off at 4:30 in the morning, it was very easy to get out of bed and write because I wanted to prove Gary wrong. It wasn't why I was writing. I was writing because I needed to tell a story. But Gary asking me those questions every morning was very, very helpful because it gave me the energy to keep on going because I wanted to prove him wrong. So after doing 2 pages a day for a while, I have stories and I start to send them out. And then what happens? They come back to me with rejection letters. Do you guys know what rejection letters are? So it's basically like somebody saying, absolutely not. I'll show you what a rejection letter looks like. Dear writer, we don't like it. Thank you for your foolish optimism, the editors. So you send a story out, you get a letter like that. Here's another sample letter. Dear writer, we still don't like it. Keep trucking, the editors. Here's one more. Dear writer, no, and so on, the editors. That's it. So every day I would come home, the mail would be waiting for me, there would be another story with another rejection letter attached. How many of those rejection letters do you think that I got? A lot. Anybody want to guess? Yes. Not 1,000, but you're not far off. Yes. 57. Not 57. 920. You guys are just as pessimistic as I am. I love that. It was 473. It's a lot of rejection letters. And here's the truth of it. Every time I stand up here with this presentation and that number comes up, I have the same thought, which is, what if I'd stopped at 200? I wouldn't be standing here now. I wouldn't be able to write books for a living. If I'd given up at rejection number 200, I wouldn't be able to do any of this, and this is what I think that I'm supposed to do with my life. So it's good that I kept on going. So for a long time, the world said, no, no, no. And then what did the world say? Yes. And that yes, that first yes, turned into this book, which you guys know because I heard that in the introduction that you know it. So it's the story of a girl who finds a dog in the grocery store, and that dog changes her life. And then this book, which is about a boy who finds a tiger in the cage in the woods, Tale of Despero, which you all know. Yeah. You're such a nice group of kids. I like you so much. And this I know you know. I really do that. It moves me that y'all like the book. It makes me so happy. So, and then this is the book that came after that about an elephant that comes through the roof of an opera house. You know these books. Yeah. Mercy Watson, who never learns a lesson about anything, right? Bengali. And then, has anybody read that one? Yeah? I thank you. It makes me happy. So, to go back to the beginning, that feeling, remember that feeling of life leaving the station without me? When I'm telling stories, that feeling goes away because I feel like I'm a part of things. That's one thing that story does for me. Being at the very top of the tower and looking out and seeing the pattern in things, seeing that things are orderly and neat, story makes me feel that way. And this feeling of something missing, of a hole, stories helps me work out those things that are missing. It helps me come to terms with what's not here. So that's how I became a writer. And now if we can bring up the lights a little bit, I'd like to come out to you guys and see if you can ask me questions, okay? And it's okay if, yeah, okay. Okay, so put your hand up. You're going to go first, right here. You got a football shirt on, right there. Yep.
How long did it take you to write Because of the Winn-Dixie?
How long did it take me to write Because of Winn-Dixie? Because of Winn-Dixie was the first book that I wrote. I didn't know what I was doing, so it didn't take me as long as it did with the other books. I didn't think that I was ever going to be published. I was just kind of telling myself a story to make myself feel better. So it was about 6 months. And within that 6 months, I rewrote it a total of 10 times. I rewrite a lot. I take something and I do a first draft, and then I do a second draft, a third draft, a fourth draft of the whole novel. That's the way I write. So is by rewriting. Yes.
How long did it take to write Edward Tulane?
Edward Tulane was the question is how long did it take to write Edward Tulane? Edward Tulane was one of those books that comes along every now and then that just kind of writes itself. So there's always a certain amount of thinking that you have to do about what might happen next. This story just told me. So before, when I said I normally do like 10 drafts, I did 4 drafts of that book before I turned it into my editor. It was just a story that wanted to be told, so it was easier than the other ones. Okay, I'm going to try to come out here in the... you've got glitter on your shirt and a soccer ball. Yes, you, looking around at your shirt. Yep. How old am I? I am 50 years old. I know. Somebody's going to say their grandmother's that old, And I'm sorry. It'll happen to you, too. Yeah. Shh. Shh. Let me see if I can get to as many people as I can back in here. Right here, you. Yes. How am I 50? Like I said, someday you will remember this moment and think, wow, she said it would happen to me. It will happen to you. I know. I can't believe it either. If somebody asks me how old I am, I have to think before I answer because I still think I'm 24. So And that will make sense to you someday too. Okay, right back here you've got glasses and a jacket on. Yes. My favorite book that I wrote. Do you have brothers and sisters? One brother. And so if we lined you up in front of your parents and said, pick your favorite, which one would they pick, your brother or you? I'll tell you what they would say. They would say, we love our children equally, but differently because they're individuals, but the love that they feel for you is equal. It's the same way with me and the books. They're my kids. I love them equally. I can't pick a favorite. Okay, I'm going to keep on getting in your way here. Sorry. Yes, right here.
What gave you the idea to write?
What gave me the idea to write Because Winn-Dixie? So you guys saw that map. I came from Florida and I moved to Minnesota. Do you think that I was shocked by the weather? Yes. Do you think that the second winter that I was in Minnesota, the high for 3 days running was 37 degrees below zero? Yes, it was. Do you think that I opened my car door and watched pieces of it fall off because it was frozen? I did. So if you're the kind of person who came from Florida and it's 37 degrees below zero, where do you want to be? Florida. And I couldn't afford to move back home, but I could write a book that took me back home. And so that's part of where Winn-Dixie came from. And the other place that the story came from is that I didn't have a dog. It was the first time in my life I'd been without a dog. How many of y'all have dogs? That's great. How many have a cat? That's a different story. We're not going to talk about that. Okay, so I couldn't have a dog in the apartment where I lived, but I could make up a dog. I could make up the best dog that I could imagine, and that was Winn-Dixie. So that's where that book came from. Okay, let's go this way. You guys are doing a great job asking questions. Right here, it's the Bears, the Chicago Bears. Yes. You're the first person that's ever asked that question. The question is, was this picture up here taken on a boat? It was. It was the Queen Elizabeth II, which was docked in Tampa, Florida at the time. And my brother was obsessed with all things British, and he made my mother drive us down there to look at the boat. Yep. Good question. No one's ever asked it before. Yes. Do I have what? Here's a good question. Do I have fun writing books? I'm going to tell you the truth. There's a wonderful quote from a writer called Dorothy Parker, and it goes like this: I hate writing. I love having written. So that means that every morning I have to push myself to do the work, and then I'm always so glad that I did it. But there's a certain amount of fear for me in writing because I don't know that I'm going to be able to do it each time, that I might not be able to make the story work out. So there's always fear. And sometimes when I'm sitting at the computer writing, I think this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing and where I'm supposed to be. Is that fun? Yeah, that's fun. So sometimes it's fun. Okay, let's go this way. You've got an orange shirt on. Yes. What was my dad like? He also wanted to be a writer, but he ended up being an orthodontist because that's what his father wanted him to be. And I was always a little bit afraid of him. And that thing with him not ever coming and living with us again really did change the kind of person that I am. And on the surface, it seems like it's a not good thing, but I always think it also is part of where the stories come from. So what sometimes seems like it's not good can turn out to be a gift in a way. So should we go? I want you guys up there in the balcony, I wonder if I point at you, like you're right here in the front row, can you stand up and shout it out? And then I think I can hear you. Yes. My favorite book that I made. They are like my kids, and I can't pick a favorite one. And then let's do one more back there in the balcony. You've got a turquoise shirt on. Yes. So you're going to have to really shout it. Yeah. Can you shout it? That's a good question. Where did the idea for Edward Tulane come from? I have a very good friend who also is a writing teacher. She gave me a rabbit doll. He's really tall. He like comes up to here on me. He's got this elegant outfit on. And when she handed him to me, I said, "Thank you, what's his name?" And she said his name is Edward. And so I brought him home. I put him on the couch in my living room. And every time I walked into the living room, he scared me. I would just like jump because he's kind of a creepy looking rabbit. And he was sitting there on the couch staring straight ahead. And the third night that I had this rabbit doll in the house, I had a dream about a rabbit being underwater, face down on the ocean floor. And you guys know this from the story, he doesn't have all of his clothing on. And so I thought, how did that rabbit get there? And that's where I started, was with that. And so, and like I said, the story kind of told itself. Yes. How was my life when I was a kid? And on one hand, it was spectacular. I was a kid who loved school, even though I missed a lot of it because I was sick a lot. I lived on a dead-end street, and there were kids on that dead-end street, and we played all the time, and so that was great. On the other hand, there was being sick all the time, which was not so good, and on the other hand, there was this thing with my father not being there, which was not so good. But just like I said with my father, it's the same thing with the not being sick. It actually turned out to be something that gave me a gift because I spent so much time with books that I think that that's part of why. It's actually true that if you read the biographies of lots of writers, you'll find that they were people who were sick a lot when they were kids. So you learn to live in your head and you learn to live in books. And so that turned out to be a gift too. You guys are asking great questions. Do we have time for a couple more, Jennifer? Are we good? 4 more questions. Okay. All right. I don't have any clock, so I didn't. I'm going to get to this balcony. Can we go over there? I think we can go down this way. Is this good? Okay. Balcony number 2. And you've got it's like a neon shirt on, and you're right there in the front. Yes. Can you stand up? Am I going to make more books soon? I'm working on a novel now, and I don't know quite when I'll finish it, but it's very much on my mind. So, and don't ask me what it's about because I won't tell you. Don't ask me the title, I won't tell you. I'm very superstitious, so until I'm totally done, I won't talk about it. And then one more balcony one. You're all the way back there. You've got your sweater tied around your waist. Be very loud, please. No, it's a good question. I have lots of different illustrators, and this is the thing, when a book is illustrated, people think that you work in the same room with the illustrator or that you choose the illustrator. None of that is true. What happens is the publisher, the editor, and the design team work together to pick the illustrator. I never talk to the illustrator. I don't meet them or anything. We're kept apart until the project is done. And I think I have 7 different illustrators, maybe 8, I'm not sure. So, okay, we got 2 more questions. Right here, yes. How many books have I written? I really need to sit down and count this up. I think it's 18 that are out in the world, and then I've got 2 more that I've done and that have gone through editing that haven't come out yet, so that makes 20. And then this novel that I'm working on now. So, and I hope that I just get to keep on doing it. Okay, now whoever asks the last question, because we're at last question part, it has to be the most profound question ever. It has to sum up everything that we talked about. Who can do that? I'm amazed at how brave you people are. You're wearing a red windbreaker. You're gonna take it home, okay?
Do you still write 2 pages a day?
It's a great question. It does sum everything up. Do I still write 2 pages a day? Yes, I do. It's the way I started. It's the way that I go forward. To me, it's like it's an easy goal to meet, and I can meet it. And so if any of you are interested in writing, Find some way to make a deal with yourself to do the work. It doesn't have to be 2 pages a day. That's what works for me. But that's what I still do, and I've been doing it for 20 years now. I want to say something before you guys, because I know you guys have to move out. You have been spectacular. Thank you for asking such good questions. Thank you for listening so carefully. And I'm so glad that I got to see all of you. So